Hello, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. I'm your host, George Kurth, and I'm here with the one and only Kobe Streetlid. It's Cody Roadcap. Cody, what's up?
Hey, speaking of Kobe, we lost the great Kobe Bryant almost 2 years ago now, but I just want to congratulate the Milwaukee Bucks completing the championship run. It's great to see the city of Milwaukee, the state of Wisconsin, get another championship. Not quite title town, but close enough.
Anything with Wisconsin, Green Bay, that whole area, I know you're a fan. So, all right. Well, why don't we move on from some basketball to some football here to start this one off? What to expect today on the podcast? We're going to give you some. We are all sports here. We have talked some golf in the last few weeks too. You're right. So we're going to give you some top NFL stories for the week this week, and we are going to be doing a cumulative mock draft, meaning one team, both of us are going to be working together on building what we think is a championship team in our mock draft this week. You can see the results of that mock draft on our social media channels and on our website. It's thecouchgms.com, and we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at thecouchgms. As well, if you are listening on podcast platform and want to watch the draft board unveil live as we draft, head over to our YouTube. We will be putting the draft board on video so you guys can follow along a little bit better. And with no further ado then, before we go to our draft, why don't we open up with some NFL news?
Of course, and with NFL news, we got to start off with everyone's favorite hashtag RodgersWatch. We're actually recording this episode on Tuesday instead of Wednesday this week. So just give you a time frame where we're at in the week. The show will probably still come out Thursday. But Tuesday we're recording this. So today, Adam Schefter came out with a new breaking news report that Aaron Rodgers has declined a 2-year contract extension that made him the highest paid quarterback. Now, if you've been listening to the show for a while, if you've been listening to Pat McAfee or the NFL Network or ESPN, you would know that this was announced in March. This was announced in May, I think even in June. He's turned down a contract extension. That's not new news. I will say, despite my intro, the Milwaukee Bucks are playing Game 6 today. Like, it's about ready to tip off, or it just tipped off a few minutes ago at the time we're recording this. It is interesting that Adam Schefter broke the story on draft night and now has broke the story again on probably the biggest night for Wisconsin fans. It just seems like there's a little bit of correlation there. I'm not accusing Adam Schefter of like trying to do some clickbait, but a little shady on that end. But that's not much news. There was a report that has been debunked by, I'm pretty sure, Aaron Rodgers himself. I think that's what Pat McAfee was hitting on his show. But over the weekend, someone on Facebook made it all the way to NFL Network with this post that their friend works for Brown County Cleaning Services, and Aaron Rodgers was getting a deep clean of his house because he'll be reporting in 2 weeks, and a lot of the other coaches were. That post went viral, made it all the way to Bleacher Report, ESPN, the Pat McAfee show. So you Couch GMs out there that are like, hey, I'm just going to put whatever I went out there. People need to know what we're talking about. That's what we're on social for. You're one of us. And see, just like that person who can make it to NFL Network one day, we might make it to NFL Network. Hey, you never know. But that's pretty much it for RodgersWatch. I know it's either stuff we've already heard or just fun stories, but training camp starts next week, kicks off next week. So hopefully by next episode or in 2 weeks, when I think there'll be an episode of all three of us together in the same location for the first time for the show.
Spoiler
so
alert.
Stay tuned for that. Hey, got to tease the people. We'll have some more information, more concrete on Aaron Rodgers. So that's your RodgersWatch. But George, there was some big news that also broke today that I really don't want to talk about. So I'm going to hand it off to you to discuss this next story. One of my favorite players who would not be playing fantasy football this year or be a part of any fantasy team this year.
Before I move on to that one and depress myself as well, because I do own some shares, I just want to give a shout out to the dude from the cleaning service. We can put him right up there in the Couch GM Hall of Fame with the Call of Duty stream a signing announcement we had earlier this offseason. It just shows the average Joe can really get out there and make it big time virally on NFL Network, whatever it might be. So we'll see what else the fun people start to pull out on us. It's always fun to watch that kind of stuff break out. Anyway, I have some shares. I have a share of Cam Akers in the Dynasty League. I'm sure, Cody, you said since you're depressed, you must as well. Cam Akers, Rams running back, is officially out for the season. He ruptured his Achilles tendon in a workout. I think it was on Monday of this week. It was reported official on Tuesday. So the Rams backfield officially is reset and extremely interesting. There's a couple of young running backs in that backfield to go along with Darrell Henderson. And while we thought Cam Akers might have been the guy that finally made that backfield go from a committee to a pretty solid starter, I think we're back in running back by committee territory for the LA Rams. What do you think, Cody?
I agree. I do think Darrell Henderson will start the season at least for majority of the carries. The undrafted guy, Xavier, I want to say Jacobs. His last name is slipping my head at the moment. I think he could be a potential guy for, some late season add-ons. I wouldn't go out there and draft him, but just keep that name in the back of your head around waiver wires. Maybe we'll see a veteran. I know it's being reported right now they have no plans to pursue a veteran. I know there's a lot of fans on Twitter that are like pounding the table to bring Todd Gurley back home for another run. I think Tyler would love that, even though he's not with us today. I'm pretty sure he would be like, let's bring Todd Gurley back home. A lot of things moving on. I don't actually own Cam Akers in any dynasty leagues. George did draft him one pick before me 2 seasons ago, or maybe no, it was last season. So he does own him, but he was one of my favorite players to target in the second round, especially if I went wide receiver or tight end in round 1. He was one of the guys I loved grabbing in the second round as the potential to be a top running back. So it definitely will be missed. Darrell Henderson, I think he can put up some decent numbers. I don't have the same ceiling for him, obviously, as I did for Cam Akers, but could definitely be a solid. We know the Rams love to use the running back, but it could be more committee than, one guy and then someone just spells him like we were anticipating with Cam Akers.
So just to give you guys out there an idea of what their depth chart looks like, some names to watch for behind Darrell Henderson, people I would not draft. I would draft Darrell Henderson, but people to watch for if there's any being a split on the waiver wire for the first few weeks. Xavier Jones, you were correct on that name. He would be the number 2 in the depth chart currently. Raymond Calais is another one. And then someone who I think might break out. He was a big hit on NFL Network leading up to the draft, and that's Jake Funk. He was a 7th round draft pick this year. I don't know if he's really a 3-down back, but he could be somebody who can get you some targets if he gets the opportunities in that backfield without the injury to Cam Akers. So we'll keep an eye on that backfield. And throughout the rest of the offseason, if we start seeing some stuff breaking out in training camp or some announcements from Sean McVay and company, we'll let you guys know where we're going. But right now, it's Darrell Henderson. Moving on to some a little bit like more bright news here. Former Pro Bowler and All-Pro Melvin Ingram, the defensive end, has signed with the Pittsburgh Steelers on a 1-year deal. I'm personally surprised it took this long for him to sign somewhere. He was a star out with the LA Chargers for a while, but the Steelers is a good landing spot. They're trying to keep that defense bolstered up to keep competing in that tough AFC North.
For sure, it'll be a good replacement for departure free agent Bud Dupree. They'll get him in there. It did take him a while, but he was coming off an injury, but he's been fully cleared. I do like the signing. I know he had some interest from other teams. Now is about the time right before camp. You'll see a few free agent signings. I'm sure we'll have a few more to report to you guys next week. Guys, they want to get in ready for camp. I know Quan Alexander. He's a big name linebacker who's recovering from a pretty significant injury, who's been recently cleared. So he'll probably get a spot to, be a camp body somewhere. Some other veterans. And we'll also start seeing some veterans that, might be uprooted by a younger player start to be cut and move teams over the next couple of weeks as we head into training camp.
My biggest name to watch for going to training camp, actually, Steven Nelson, the corner, formerly the Steelers, is still a free agent. Interesting to see where he signs. There's a couple of teams interested, so keep an eye out for that name.
especially like a quality corner like Nelson. Like he's no
Mhm.
Stephon Gilmore, Jalen Ramsey, but he's a solid number two cornerback. You know, he could potentially be a number one on a team, but if a team is banking on a rookie to come in and start right away, and they're just not transitioning games. Not saying they're giving up on their rookie, but if they're not transitioning to the NFL level, Steven Nelson could be a good gap fill guy. So I do like that name that you dropped out. But unfortunately, as I was about to get to, we did have one other bad news to get out there. The Jets assistant coach, Greg Knapp. We just want to wish him well, hope for recovery as much as possible. He's in very critical condition right now in a bike accident. There is actually not a lot out there at the moment. The Jets are keeping it pretty under wraps, but he was their passing game coordinator. I know he meant a lot. I know his wife put out a statement about how him being a husband and a father exceeded anything he's ever done in the coaching world. And they're just, asking for prayers if that's your thing, or good thoughts or wishes, or just good vibes. So we want to send those from the Couch GMs to the Greg Knapp family, and hopefully he can make a full recovery.
Best wishes to Greg and family. And something that I think I'm going to try to start working into our weekly news segment here. Let's get some quotes of the week, why don't we? And the first one, maybe I'm not too excited about. Tom Brady's personal trainer came out this week and said to expect Tom Brady to play 2 more seasons in the NFL, which would fulfill his dream of playing in the NFL until he is 45 years old. In today's day and age, that number is absolutely unheard of. And Cody, I'm sure you're as excited as me to hear Tom Brady for 2 more years.
Okay, I'm not excited for Tom Brady for 2 years, but I will say this about Tom Brady. I do not like Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady is a little bit overrated. Now, I do think what he was able to do with the Buccaneers goes a long way in the people's argument against, was it him or Bill Belichick? I still think Bill Belichick is one of the best coaches. And I think he was a part of a really good system that always had a top 10 defense, stuff like that. I'm not discrediting this guy. Like, he is right up there. It's like comparing LeBron James to Michael Jordan. If we want to get into that, who's better? They're both really good. We don't really need to, make one guy the GOAT or not. But I will say, watching the match, because we talked about golf a couple weeks ago with the match with him and Aaron Rodgers, seeing him have more of a social presence with the memes and him joking around with Rodgers, showing a little bit of that personality side of Aaron Rodgers. Sorry, excuse me, Tom Brady. It just actually made me like the guy a little bit more. I feel like I saw more personality of him. He wasn't the guy that yells at all his teammates, but then everyone calls that leadership, but then someone else does it. And, he always seemed to get like the benefit of the doubt. And part of it is because of his talent. He's deserved it. So I'm not saying I'm rooting for Tom Brady to get to year 45, but if he does, all the power to him. I just hope that you don't beat Green Bay in the playoffs again. If you want to play to 48, but don't beat Green Bay in the playoffs again, all good by me. And it will be interesting to see if he finishes his career out in Tampa, or if he maybe gets some West Coast fever, or goes full circle back to New England for one last ride at 45. There's a lot to play out. But if anyone's going to do it, Tom Brady definitely is. He's in great shape. And guy everybody loves to hate, but he deserves a lot of credit for everything he's accomplished off the football, or on and off the football field.
I will admit, I also love to hate him. I wish he would have retired sooner because I feel like the whole NFL is kind of leaned towards Tom Brady. But the social media thing that you said was a great point. I remember a few years back, he joined social media and the first thing he did was post a video teasing that he was going to retire and then said, "Just kidding, I'm coming back." And I think from that point, you realize that he does have a personality that you don't see on the football field. And I do appreciate that. So you're right. I'll go with you on that point. Couple more quotes here that I'm going to rapid fire here before we move on. Ryan Fitzpatrick of the Washington football team says that Washington is the best situation I have ever been in. I thought about this for a while and I was like, there's no way. But It probably really is. He was in a decent situation last year in Miami, but Washington had a decent team with a good defense, and they got better this offseason. So if they give Ryan Fitzpatrick a chance to start, there's a chance that he could have the best season of his career, finally make the playoffs, and maybe make a run. We'll find out. Staying in the NFC least, running back Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants, when asked if he would be ready for training camp, preseason, or the regular season, said, "I don't have the answer, to be honest." Not a great look for anybody who is going to spend a lot of draft capital in Saquon Barkley, but I wouldn't read too much into it yet. We'll see more when we actually see him on or not on the practice field for training camp. I think the team's probably just trying to keep everything in-house and make sure they move slow with him to make sure he doesn't re-injure anything. And free agent running back Adrian Peterson says that he still feels young, he still feels good, and he's ready to play ball. He could be somebody that the Rams sign again, as we're talking about the Rams filling a running back hole. Todd Gurley, I think, would be a perfect fit, but Adrian Peterson might be someone to watch there as well.
Yeah, Adrian Peterson, the guy that can seem to play forever. He fixed his
He's going to be the new
fumbling
Frank
issues
Gore.
from his career. Hey, he could be the new Frank Gore, but hey, I don't even think Frank Gore is officially done yet. So he have to play even longer to catch up to Frank Gore. You know, I think we need to get even a fun drop for quotes of the week. I'm feeling this segment. I like these little fun quotes. So hopefully you guys are enjoying them as much as we are. But now I think it's time to get into the draft.
Yes, why don't we get started with this mock draft? First, just really quick, you guys, the little PSA here, it is important to mock draft before you guys do your drafts in your actual leagues. It's a good tool to use to give an idea on where some players are going to fall. It's not an exact science. Every draft is different, especially when you get into a league. You're always going to have that little bit of like, oh no, that gets you off your draft strategy. But it gives you a good idea to feel comfortable on where some guys are going to fall. So now moving on to this draft here, how it's going to work a little bit. We're going to use Sleeper for our mock draft. Hashtag not a sponsor, but we're welcome you too, Sleeper. We're listening for you. We're going to do a 12-team draft that will go 13 rounds. So the rosters will be a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a flex spot, a kicker, a defense, and 4 bench spots, if I'm thinking correctly there, Cody. 4 bench spots. We're going to give ourselves 5 minutes. 5 minutes to make a pick here. And this is, like I said, we said in the beginning, a cumulative draft. So we are drafting together as one team. We're going to rotate rounds on which one of us gets the final decision, but we'll be talking through the whole thing in our mindsets and giving some ideas to the other person. A random number generator picked our spot. We are going to be picking from the number 4 slot in the draft. And a reminder for you guys listening on podcasting platforms, we're going to read out all the picks as we go. We're going to read out whatever we pick. But if you want to follow along easier, we're going to put the draft board on the bottom of your screen on our YouTube video. So feel free to go over to YouTube and check it out if you want to follow along with the draft a little closer.
Absolutely. So we're going to kick things off here. The draft is now underway. We are pick 4. Team 1 went Christian McCaffrey. Team 2, Derrick Henry. Team 3 went Alvin Kamara, which leaves us as number 4 pick here. And if you're looking on YouTube, I'm not 100% sure how much of the screen you can see, but the top 3 available are Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley, and Jonathan Taylor. Because of the news we just talked about, Saquon Barkley not even 100% sure he'll be ready for week 1. I think that removes him from our consideration. So for me, it's Dalvin Cook or maybe Jonathan Taylor if you really love his upside. I'm a big fan of Jonathan Taylor here. But George, if you're okay with it, I feel like we've been talking about the big 4 all offseason long. I feel like we have to grab Dalvin Cook at this spot and be pretty happy because I know in my way too early rankings, I had him as number 2 to get him at 4. You had him, I believe, at 3. So we're both getting a plus value here.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's Dalvin Cook here. The only other person that I personally would question is Saquon Barkley, but I really didn't like that quote we just said a couple minutes ago. So he's definitely going to fall to my 5 probably on the board. If Dalvin Cook's on the board, we got to take him here.
Sounds good. So I have now selected Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley goes 5, like George mentioned. Nick Chubb 6, Jonathan Taylor 7. Tyreek Hill is the first wide receiver off the board at 8. Ezekiel Elliott at 9. Aaron Jones at 10. Devontae Adams at 11. And Stephon Diggs wraps up round 1 at number 12. Coming back around, team 12 in the top of the second round gets Travis Kelce, followed by Austin Eckler. Then Cam Akers does go, so it looks like the sleeper is not quite up to date with the injury news, so he definitely won't go in normal drafts that high. I don't think Darrell Henderson will go that high either, but just something to keep out. So these guys would probably slide down a spot. Antonio Gibson for Team 9 with the 4th pick in the second round. Then DK Metcalf, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Hopkins, and Najee Harris, a surprise pick this high in the second round, in my opinion. But that puts us back up with the 9th pick in the second round. George, I know you're leading. You get to make the final say with this one. There's, A.J. Brown, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson. There's 3 top wide receivers here. Patrick Mahomes, I know we're traditionally late round quarterbacks, and then obviously George Kittle if we want to dip into the tight end market. But where's your head at? What are you thinking at? Maybe I'll agree with you, disagree with you.
So yeah, the first thing I looked at was that big 3 wide receivers that were still on the board, like you said, with Brown, Ridley, and Jefferson. That's most likely where I'm thinking here. I did see Patrick Mahomes, and I just discounted it. If he somehow falls into round 3, I might want him. Don't want him in round 2. And I have a
If we get him at
similar
3-4,
feeling.
I'm taking Patrick Mahomes.
Oh yeah. I have a similar feeling with George Kittle. I think if I was picking in that first slot and he fell to round 2, pick 12, I might want George Kittle. Here, I'm probably going to shade wide receiver. Out of the group of A.J. Brown, Calvin Ridley, and Justin Jefferson, I like A.J. Brown the best, especially since they got Julio Jones. I don't think that really hurts his outlook too much. I think it actually helps him to take some pressure off. He's not going to see as much double coverage with someone with a name like Julio Jones across from him.
Okay, well, I'm going to make the argument for Justin Jefferson, even though we might be able to get him in the next round. I did lower A.J. Brown a little bit for Julio Jones, which obviously it's not showing in the current standings or rankings Sleeper's putting out here. So I totally get where he's at. I know if Tyler was here, he'd be pounding the table for A.J. Brown. And I've mentioned on last week's show, Calvin Ridley's just the guy that, like, I never have him on one of my teams because I'm always so hesitant to take him. But he is the one thing to know, he is the number 1 in Atlanta right now, and Matt Ryan is still a decent quarterback. So it's definitely a tough decision, which I'm glad I don't have to make. And it's all up to you. I'm not going to be mad if you take any of those 3, to be honest. So you can't go wrong, in my opinion.
I was hoping you'd give me a little bit more convincing there on Justin Jefferson. I'm still going to go with A.J. Brown here. I don't think you can go wrong with any of the 3, though, like you said. So we'll take A.J. Brown, and we'll see what we get here coming around to the 3rd round.
All right, Clyde Edwards-Helaire went for pick 210. Wow, can't even speak. Team 3. And then Michael Thomas for 211, and Patrick Mahomes did round out round 2. Round 3 kicked it off with George Kittle. Then Darren Waller all the way up here for Team 2, pick 3 to Calvin Ridley. And we are back on the clock. Now the question is, do we take Justin Jefferson, who we were debating between there? George was like, hey, can make me an argument for Justin Jefferson. Or do we take a guy like J.K. Dobbins? He's high in the running back room. We'd heard the report last week. We have David Montgomery available if we're looking for running backs. This is so tough too, and I'd love to hear your opinion. Like, my heart is telling me Justin Jefferson, you have to take him. But does it scare you at all that we have Dalvin Cook, who is also a Vikings? Are we getting too much of the Vikings offense this early in the draft?
That is a great point. I normally don't think too much about it when I'm thinking in the first 3 rounds because I normally want to take best available. It'll hurt a little bit at the bye week if you have Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson out in the same week. But there's always that strategy as well of you stack your bye weeks into 1 week, and then you don't have to worry about it the other, 17 weeks of the season, 16 weeks of the season. I wanted to peek at running backs because I do like picking Justin Jefferson here, but I want to make sure that with the long turn back around, we can get a solid running back too near the end of round 4. And there are a couple options further down the board that I like. The Chris Carson, Miles Sanders, Miles Gaskin. Even, I'm a big advocate for Mike Davis. So because there's those guys down there that I think we could see fall to 4-9, I'm okay with taking Justin Jefferson here and stacking the 2 big wide receivers.
You definitely make some great points there. I know you're a big fan of Mike Davis. That might be our 4th round target. But you had me sold at I don't really put too much fact into that in the first 3 rounds. I was ready to click Justin Jefferson then. I love our wide receivers, and I think Dalvin Cook is a great number 1 running back. After us went Keenan Allen and then Allen Robinson. Then we did have a little run of running backs being J.K. Dobbins, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery. Terry McLaurin sleeped in there. Then we went back to running backs with Josh Jacobs, and Julio Jones rounded out round 3. Round 4, we started to see some started to see some quarterbacks go as Josh Allen kicked off round 4, followed by Miles Sanders and Chris Carson. Then we had Lamar Jackson, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Kyler Murray, and Chris Godwin. We are now back on the clock. 9th pick in the 4th round. Again, the Georges, he gets the final say. That's how we're going to, go back and forth here. The board, I know Mike Davis is a little bit further down. There is a part of me that's like, hey, maybe we should, risk it a little bit, maybe steal Mark Andrews to get high on the tight end board, or just go safe with a guy like Kareem Hunt or Miles Gaskin. But what are you thinking about here?
So yeah, definitely the first thing that came in my mind was Miles Gaskin. Just to give everyone at home a little bit of an idea of what the top 3 running backs look like. It's Miles Gaskin, Kareem Hunt, which I do love Kareem Hunt, but I don't know if I love him more than a flex. I think it's just because I'm afraid of him splitting with Nick Chubb so much. And then Travis Etienne, who's the rookie. Rookies are unpredictable. Again, a tough sell at RB2. I'd almost rather wait and get Mike Davis, who I feel like is that safe, high floor, but maybe low ceiling guy, just to be a consistent RB2. So I like the idea actually of taking the risk and going Mark Andrews. I like him a little bit more than Kyle Pitts, again, because of the rookie uncertainty there. So I'm okay with going the green light with the Mark Andrews pick if you want to go with it.
Hey, you get the final say, but before you make it, I just want to, maybe close your eyes for a second. I know this can be hard because I'm about to talk about a Cowboys wide receiver, but we saw what Dak Prescott, the numbers he was putting up before his ankle injury. They're loaded with weapons. I know it's a 3-way monster, but if we locked up CeeDee Lamb and had a trio of A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb, I know it'd be a risk because then we're really banking on getting, Mike Evans in the 5th, which we're doing with Mark Andrews too. But Mark Andrews is that last tight end that I would be willing to take this high. If not, I'm waiting for a tight end near the end. So I've given you all my options. You get to make the final pick. Another one, I feel like my picks so far have been pretty easy, and yours have been the more difficult ones, which I'll take. I love when the pick or a guy falls to you in fantasy. It makes the pick so much easier. A lot to think about here. Again, I still think we're a little too early that we can't really go wrong. We've mentioned it's all about how you build your team and manage your team. So I don't think you can go wrong either way here, but the choice is yours.
So, you're trying to sell me on CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is almost in the room of one of those guys that's like a Calvin Ridley to you. When I look at wide receivers on the board, the first guy that comes in my mind is Bobby Trees, Robert Woods. I like him better than CeeDee Lamb. Don't really want to pick him here, though. So, after hearing everything and doing a little bit of, fighting around in my head, I'm going to pass on the Miles Gaskin pick. I'm going to go with the tight end and Mark Andrews. And we'll lock up one of those top tight ends. See how that works out for us as we come around to pick 5. 410 was CeeDee Lamb, so he went right there after us. We had Travis Etienne go at 411. DJ Moore rounding out the 4th round. Robert Woods there for the first pick in the 5th round. Kenny Galladay then after him, and almost coming back around to us was Myles Gaskin, but he went at 5th round pick 3. So now we're back on the board, a little bit of a reset. Kareem Hunt is still there. I mentioned him, but I don't know if we love him as a running back too. And we still obviously have Mike Davis, as we were talking about, as one of those safe picks. And Chase Edmonds is on the running back board as well. I think we have to be tunnel vision on running back, only having one in the first 4 rounds. I don't know about what you think.
I hear you. I do hear you. I think it's tough to, pass on running backs at this point. I think we would have hit a home run if Myles Gaskin would have fell one more slot to us. But see, I'm at that point though. It's tough because our guy Mike Davis. I'm going to call him our guy. We've both been on board with the Mike Davis train, but he doesn't have his current ADP is 65. I know there's some gamemanship we can play now. We're again obviously drafting against AI. It's a little bit more easy to predict the gamemanship than it is against actual people. So if there's a guy you really like, maybe we should take him. Kareem Hunt, I do like him. I had him as an RB2 in one of my leagues last year. I do think he can put up the numbers for it, especially because this is a half-point PPR league, so I think we do balance out with his passing game connections. The Chase Edmonds pick, I think, could be a sneaky, really good one. I think he does have some high upside. He did show he could, ball out when we deal with the Kenyon Drake injuries last year, and he is from Harrisburg, so shout out to my kind of close hometown. But there's one guy on here that I think has such a high ceiling. Now, he does deal with drops a little bit, and it'd be a third wide receiver. And apparently, I just want to get a huge trio of wide receivers. And that's Deontay Johnson. I know Tyler is not a guy that's high on Deontay Johnson, or he wasn't back when we did our way too early wide receiver rankings. Me and you were both pretty high on him. So I'm torn because the part of me that says go get the best player is going to get Deontay Johnson. The part of me that's like build the best team in the draft is telling me to take Kareem Hunt, and then I'll try to get Mike Davis and have those two as my running backs. Have the solid safe guy and the guy that could be a PPR monster, and it would be a huge handcuff for Nick Chubb, who did go in. Where did he go? The first round? Yeah, he went pick 6. So
pick 6.
Oh man, this is the first hard one for me. I hate to be the guy that's just like, oh, I'm gonna pick the top player on the board, the ranking wise. But I do think I have to. If there's any way Deontay Johnson makes it all the way back to the long term, we have to take him here. Like I'm really struggling. Like I don't want to waste any more time. Like I know there's a minute and a half left on the clock here, but I'll go ahead and make the pick of Kareem Hunt. And hopefully this isn't the pick I end up regretting in the draft if there's a couple of running backs I like later. But it is solid to get the starting core, especially since we did take Mark Andrews. We should definitely lock in a running back before worrying about a flex wide receiver.
I definitely like that pick because of the running backs that would come back around, there's some decent guys who could maybe be a flex or be a bye week fill-in, but we're talking RB2 still this late. That's the only reason I think you had to think running back. We didn't exactly go 0 running back strategy, but we went just about as close as you could when you go first round running back and then wait until round 5. So it's a different strategy than I saw either of you guys take in your dueling mock drafts a couple of weeks ago. To catch us up then to round 6, we had Adam Thielen go after us, then Cooper Kupp and Tyler Lockett. Couple of tight ends after that, and TJ Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts. Deontay Johnson did not make it back around. He went at 5'10". Rounding out the 5th round was Chase Edmonds and Brandon Ayuk. Mike Davis got to his round 6, pick 1. Amazing value for him, I think, there, by the way. T. Higgins at pick 2 there in round 6. Then Raheem Mostert. Jamar Chase, rookie wide receiver, off the board there. Another quarterback in Dak Prescott after that. Javonte Williams, Denver's running back at pick 6. Odell Beckham, and then Dallas Goedert, another tight end in the 6th round. I feel like it's a little early for some of these tight ends to go, but maybe not. We're starting to get to people rounding out their starting lineups. Now this pick is going to be a little bit more interesting. Top of the board looks like there's a couple of quarterbacks, Justin Herbert and Russell Wilson. I love both of them, but I think at this point, we're starting to get to the point where I'm okay with waiting on quarterbacks. As much as I love Herbert and Wilson, I don't think their point potential is as good as some of the guys you can get in a round or two. So I'm going to look past them. We don't know what the Denver backfield is going to look like. Melvin Gordon's up there as well. Javonte Williams just went. I don't know if I want to even touch that. So I want to go back to wide receiver to fill our flex here, I think. We did not get who you wanted there in Deontay Johnson. His wide receiver mate in Chase Claypool is on the board. We also got Courtland Sutton, who missed all of last year in Denver, but is a stud wide receiver if he can stay healthy. And then DJ Chark would be the top three on the board. I think personally, as much as I have a grudge against this guy, Chase Claypool, I think, is the best guy on the board. That's who I would personally go with. You want to give me an argument for Sutton or Chark here?
Yeah, I think it's tough. I think Claypool and Sutton are definitely a coin flip. I think if Sutton wasn't coming off an injury, he would be gone by now, despite not knowing if the quarterback's going to be Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, or Aaron Rodgers, maybe. Maybe we take him just on that. You get Courtland Sutton in the 6th round and Aaron Rodgers gets traded 3 days later. Congratulations, you just got a top wide receiver in round 6. But we don't think that's going to happen, so I don't think we should draft thinking that. I did want to get your thoughts. The one guy you did gloss over on the top available board is a guy that was a surprise last year. I know they drafted a 1st-round running back, but we talked about him taking wide receiver snaps, being heavily involved in the passing game, and that's James Robinson. Since we did, take our 2nd running back late, again, he's similar to Mike Davis. I don't think he is ceiling as anywhere near as high as the top 5 running back he was last year. But, I do think there is potential for him to still get 15 to 20 carries a game, and he showed that he could do something with it. Now, maybe halfway through the season, Travis Etienne completely takes over, or maybe everyone's just getting too overhyped by the rookie, and we talk about the NFL as running back by committee. We see Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt do it. What if they're trying to recreate that in Jacksonville? Again, it's another tough call. I definitely don't like Claypool as much as Deontay Johnson, but granted, that's why Deontay Johnson is already gone. But I do think that passing offense is definitely a little bit more potent than I believe the Jaguars' offense will be. So again, I don't think you can go wrong with either Claypool or Robinson. Those would be mine, and then Courtland Sutton would be a sneaky pick if you just want to go based on upside. But I do agree with your point. Too early to take a quarterback that's not named Patrick Mahomes. So anywhere you go, this isn't a make or break pick. A lot of times, whoever you draft in the 6th round, you end up trading or cutting. Even it's not a cornerstone, but there is only 20 seconds left, George. You have at least that amount of time to make your pick.
So still tossing the Claypool versus James Robinson thing. I think you made enough of an argument here, and especially with us having 2 really high wide receivers, I'm going to go with James Robinson. We're going to try to find some of our favorite wide receivers here in the next few rounds, especially because I know you love drafting mid-round wide receivers, and there's a lot of good ones on the board. We'll fill that 3rd running back now already and hopefully give a little bit more stability to Kareem Hunt, and maybe James Robinson ends up being a 1st and 2nd down back and a goal line back who ends up just, being fine in fantasy regardless. So the 2 quarterbacks I mentioned did go off the board and going up to our next pick. Justin Herbert was after that, and then it was Melvin Gordon, Ronald Jones in that crowded Tampa Bay backfield, Juju Smith-Schuster after that, Russell Wilson, there's the other quarterback, and then DJ Chark was picked right before us. Worth noting, Juju Smith-Schuster went before Chase Claypool, and last pick we were debating Chase Claypool, he's still on the board. Is that where you're thinking here?
I am thinking Chase Claypool. I'm thinking Courtland Sutton because that's who I was debating there. I do think James Robinson was the best pick in that spot. Was smart to get one more at least reliable running back at this point. The wide receiver Deebo Samuel, I've talked about my love for Deebo Samuel. So again, if I had a team with Justin Jefferson and Deebo Samuel, like probably two of my favorite wide receivers that aren't Green Bay Packers, so I would love that from a fan perspective. Aaron Rodgers is sitting on in the top 5 available players right now. But I mentioned this when me and Snyder did our head-to-head drafts. If you look at the draft board, there is only 4 teams left that haven't already taken their first quarterback. And if you still have, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Joe Burrow, Ryan Tannehill, Matt Stafford, all those guys, I think are, capable and quality fantasy quarterbacks. I think, some of them will be better than others this year. It's too hard to tell. So I am going to take Aaron Rodgers off the board for now. If for some reason he's around in round 9, which I doubt he'll be, I'm taking Aaron Rodgers. I'm telling you that now. Oh man, I feel like we should take Claypool because that's who we were debating the last time. But Deebo Samuel is like calling out to me, George. I need you to talk some sense. Why should I take Claypool over Deebo Samuel?
We talked about Deontay Johnson's drop problem. And even before that, there was a very blurred line on who the wide receiver 1 was between Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson. Now, I don't know if they're going to quite mass throw the ball like they did last year, but both of them were getting 12 targets a game consistently, and Claypool was actually the one turning more of those into catches. It's just Deontay Johnson was the slightly more explosive player, which is why I like him a little better. But with that volume in round 7, I think that's why I like Claypool. I get it. I love Deebo Samuel, but I think when Samuel and Ayuk both play, they both play similar roles. So they're both going to be good, but they're both not going to be amazing. While I think Chase Claypool has a chance to sneak the wide receiver 1 targets, get a slightly bigger target share than a Deontay Johnson and more than a Juju Smith-Schuster, and make this 7th round pick really a boom.
Okay, I'm liking what you're thinking. One thing I did just happen to notice, he does have a week 7 bye, the same as Justin Jefferson, the same as Dalvin Cook. Um, so he's not helping us out in our bye week. Again, we said it's not the end of the world if everyone on your team has a bye week that week. But he is a depth player, so I just wanted to point that out. Does that sway your decision at all, or do you still think his potential volume is enough to say, hey, go get Chase Claypool?
I mean, I think technically he's going to be our flex starter most weeks. Depending on where we see what happens out of James Robinson. But when you think about it, he's actually our first bench player being drafted if you look at it in technical draft order. So being a bench player, I'm not too worried about the bye week. And if we have to tank it in week 7, or maybe we'll have a 9th round wide receiver start in week 7, hey, it happens.
All right, it looks like we're tanking because while you were talking, I did see that James Robinson is also on a bye week 7.
Oh.
So team tank week 7, here we go. And we're taking Chase Claypool. After our pick, Aaron Rodgers did go, so he was definitely not making it back to us. Robbie Anderson, Cortland Sutton, David Johnson, Deebo Samuel fell to the 9th pick in round 7. Noah Fant, Will Fuller. I do love the value of Will Fuller late. He is the number 1 guy in Miami. That is some great value here. Damian Harris, I think, could be a sleeper running back to round out round 7. Then we had Tyler Boyd, Logan Thomas, Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, Jerry Jeudy, Brandon Cooks, Michael Carter, and Curtis Samuel. And we're back on the clock in pick 8. And we did see 2 more quarterbacks go, meaning there's just us and one other team with no quarterback. There's a lot of guys available on the board. I know who I would take in this spot, but I would love to hear what you're thinking. And if it's the same guy, it makes their pick easy.
I don't know who I want to pick in this pick. Well, I think I'm going to take quarterback off the board because the number 1 quarterback on the board is Tom Brady. Number 2 is Matt Stafford. I like Matt Stafford better, but if I lose out on Stafford, I'm okay with taking Brady, or I'm okay with taking Joe Burrow as well, because we're most likely going to stack him up with another quarterback in another round or 2. That'll pretty much be flip-flop starters. So I'm just going to take that off the board right away and hope that that other team that doesn't have a quarterback takes one first, makes my decision a little bit easier. Running backs. I feel like you may be talking Trey Sermon. I know you love Trey Sermon.
Hmm.
He's someone that came to mind for me as well here in this pick. And then at wide receiver, I know you like the value of Will Fuller. I like the outlook for Jalen Waddle as well, especially getting down into these mid rounds in round 8. You could take someone like Jalen Waddle and he ends up being a boom because you just don't know what his output's going to be. He ended up playing like a 4th round wide receiver and we just don't know it, and he fell this far because he's a rookie. So I'm kind of between the two rookies here in this mid round, Trey Sermon and Jalen Waddle. I'm going to let you say if there was either of those two you were thinking, see if you can sway me.
You nailed it. I was thinking Trey Sermon. I do love his value here. I love the Shanahan offense for running backs. I think he will take over as the lead back. I do love Raheem Mostert, so it could be by a committee for a little bit. But we have seen that pretty much any running back in that system is elite. And I hear you with Jalen Waddle, but if I do scroll down the board, there's guys that I'm not saying they're, incredible values, but I do love taking guys late like Corey Davis, the number one option for the Jets, Michael Pittman, the number one option for the Indianapolis Colts. So since there's some guys a little bit later, um, I do like Trey Sermon. And I honestly, if you wanted to take a quarterback here, again, I agree. I still think it's a little bit too early for me, but I actually do really like the Tom Brady pick at this point in the draft. I'm sure in most drafts he's gone by pick 5. I don't think there's that many people that will let him fall this far. But that offense is still pretty potent. He's still going to put up a lot of points. And I'm tired of saying, well, Tom Brady's going to fall off. Well, we've been saying that for 4 years, and he keeps proving us wrong. So maybe it'll be the year I finally draft him in fantasy. So for me, it's between Trey Sermon and Tom Brady, but I completely understand if you'd rather, wait it out for a quarterback here in the next couple of rounds.
I'm going to keep waiting out on the quarterback, I think. And I feel like you're the guy who it likes to stack those mid round wide receivers. So I'm going to go with the running back and Trey Sermon. And we can look at some of those wide receivers later. Like you were saying, there are a lot of names out there that I do like coming up. So we'll see what happens in a round or two when we look at wide receivers again.
Alrighty, well, it's a good thing you took a running back because you started a little bit of a run. We did see Trey Sermon go by us, then Zach Moss and Leonard Fournette, and then Jalen Waddle, another guy George was thinking about rounded out or finished off round 8. Round 9 was Jarvis Landry, then Kenyon Drake, Corey Davis, a guy I mentioned when trying to convince George of Trey Sermon, and now we are back on the clock here. I mentioned my reasons for taking Tom Brady. I'm still thinking only because of Joe Burrow and Ryan Tannehill makes me say you can wait on it, but I honestly do think Tom Brady could be a top 5 quarterback again this year. So I think the value would be good, but I do enjoy a little bit of a mobile running back quarterback like Ryan Tannehill. Outside of that, it'd be Michael Pittman. We have our locked in wide receiver, our locked in tight end, but again, this is why we often talk about drafting tight ends not early, because I think the value of Robert Tonyan or Tonyan, it's Tunyon Funyon.
It
I
is Tunyon.
apologize out there, Robert. And then Irv Smith Jr. from Minnesota. I think he is in play there. Again, we wouldn't take Irv Smith because we already have 2 Minnesota Vikings. We wouldn't want that many shares of their offense. And then, we talked about AJ Dillon being one of the top handcuffs. So that means we should also, if we're thinking about handcuffs, we should also be thinking about Alexander Mattinson because we do have Dalvin Cook. I think we can wait around on Dalvin Cook here. George, I'm really going to need you to talk me out of not taking Tom Brady here because that's the guy I think the value is too good. Like, I feel like he's a top 5 tight end or quarterback we're going to get in round 9 here. Maybe he wants to play tight end. Everybody else wants to play tight end this year.
Everyone wants to play tight end. No, I just wanted to make sure the seed was in your head about thinking about Alexander Madison, but I agree. I think if he's there in round 10, he's got to be a lock in that pick. The only other person I was going to argue, and it's somebody who's a little unproven, you mentioned Michael Pittman. He is a number 1 wide receiver. I think that might be the only other place I go. But we did wait a while. The computer did not make a decision for us on quarterback. But Tom Brady as the 9th quarterback off the board is pretty good. It's right around where I have him in my rankings. Getting him in the 9th round isn't bad. I'm going to say go ahead and take Tom Brady. And then we'll see about Alexander Mattison next round.
Yeah, and he's actually the 10th quarterback taken. There was 9 taken. You got to scroll up to see Patrick Mahomes was there.
Oh, yeah.
Tom Brady, 10th quarterback taken. That's probably going to be the steal of the draft. James Conner went next, followed by Matthew Stafford. Good thing we did take him because it is looking like teams are doubling up, and that's always the tricky part. We talk about not needing to really double up, but after Matt Stafford went Mike Gesicki, then Joe Burrow, Laviska Shenault, Marquise Hollywood Brown, then Ryan Tannehill, Robert Tunyon Funyon finishes round 9. Packers running back A.J. Dillon is here to start off round 10, followed by Gus Edwards, Irv Smith Jr., Trevor Lawrence, Nyheim Hines, Matt Ryan, Mike Williams, and Michael Pittman. George, I don't know who we would have had a quarterback if we didn't take Tom Brady. That's the one thing you do have to worry about. You have to know when the value meets the road, because you'd hate to say, oh, we can wait one more round. There's 4 guys. You're like, well, look, 5, 6 guys went. So we definitely lucked out there by snagging Tom Brady. That's why we are the Couch GM draft experts. I'm a little sad Michael Pittman did go right before us. But because we have Dalvin Cook, I feel like we need to lock it up and grab Alexander Mattison. And the only other name I'm going to throw out there just so we can talk about him, he probably won't be around this late in drafts anymore, but that is Darrell Henderson is still on the board, and he probably should have been gone by now that he is the lead running back. So maybe we'll let a computer actually take him, just because he should have probably went when we took James Robinson or Trey Sermon. We should have been looking at Darrell Henderson if he wasn't already gone. He'll probably go in the Kareem Hunt range, if not a little bit earlier. But this is George's pick. I know he did say he really wanted to get that handcuff in Alexander Mattison, which is probably even more smart for us since we waited so long to get the second round, our second starting running back. But George, is there any guy on the board currently that makes you say, maybe I should risk it one more round because the handcuff isn't that important?
I mean, I think we've got 4 running backs now. If we grab a handcuff in Madison, I think we can kind of put a bow on running backs for the draft. There's a couple guys left on the board I might, think about taking late round flyers on, but we're pretty set if we get 5, one of them wins a handcuff. I think if Michael Pittman fell, that would have been the guy to make me think maybe we should wait another round on Mattson. But the other wide receivers on the board we could take would be Michael Gallup, Antonio Brown, Devontae Parker. They're very meh to me and deeper in the depth chart. Darnell Mooney might be one of the better guys. I like him as a sleeper wide receiver, but I think it's smart to put a bow on running backs, take Alexander Mattison, lock up the Minnesota backfield, and we'll see how our running back 2, 3, 4 line up. I think we have a solid group there to be able to fill the RB2 spot and then just have the RB1 spot locked up.
I get what you're saying. That's a great pick there. Devontae, his name is Devin, Cody. Devin Singletary went after us, followed by Rob Gronkowski and then Michael Gallup. Handcuff, Tony Pollard kicked off round 11, then Darnell Mooney, Tyler Higbee, and we are now back on the clock. Again, if you're watching, you're probably like, why aren't you taking Darrell Henderson? And that's because he most likely won't be around when we are picking. So we're not trying to cheat the system or anything like that. If we wanted him, we would have considered him, when we were talking Kareem Hunt or James Robinson. So we're going to ignore him, or at least I'm going to ignore him. If he's around, he's there in the next round or two, we can do that. I do like the potential of Antonio Brown. I don't think he's going to be, an elite wide receiver, but I do like the stackability we have with him if to fill in weeks, since Tom Brady is now our starting quarterback. But the one guy that I'm really intrigued by as a solid wide receiver is Marvin Jones. He came in this year. He's probably going to be the wide receiver one. I know Trevor Lawrence is a rookie. I know we already have James Robinson, so it's a lot of pieces of a pretty bad offense. But again, it's another number one wide receiver we don't know too much about. But Marvin Jones is just a guy that is always consistently putting up numbers. He did it in Detroit when Matt Stafford was hurt and David Blau was the quarterback. If you remember who David Blau is, he
I
put up numbers
remember
with
all the
Marvin.
jokes on Thanksgiving that my family was making. He wasn't going to blow the game. So that's the only reason I remember David Blau.
Yeah. So I do like the Marvin Jones pick here. Tyler would probably tell you Henry Ruggs because he probably has 98 speed in Madden, and that's how Tyler picks his team. But George, is there any guy that I've missed on the board? Maybe even rookie Rashad Bateman, if you want to take another flyer on a rookie. But I know not all of us are fans of the Baltimore Ravens passing attack. Out of those guys, is there anyone I'm missing? Maybe you love Devontae Parker. What are your thoughts?
Now I'm going to take the same kind of strategy as when we were looking at our RB2. So we actually have 3 wide receivers on our team right now. And that is AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, Chase Claypool. I'm surprised the team partly being drafted by Cody Roadcap only has 3 wide receivers in round 11. But because of that, I think the safe move is to go with all reliable. And that is Marvin Jones. He was the guy that popped out on my board. I think if it was our 5th receiver or 6th receiver, I like the boom potential of someone like a Rashad Bateman, maybe even a T.Y. Hilton or an Elijah Moore. But because of the situation that
Don't
he
give away my
could
next
be,
round pick, George.
we could, like, Marvin Jones might be one injury away from starting in our flex. You never really know. So I think all reliable is a good pick with Marvin Jones.
Okay, I'm interested that you didn't say old reliable to be Antonio Brown. I know some people are still high on him being the consistent number one wide receiver off the board back when it was crazy to take a wide receiver before pick 6, and everyone's like, well, maybe Antonio Brown. But because he stuck out to you, he stuck out to me. I will take Marvin Jones here. Antonio Brown did go next, followed by Hunter Henry. Then Darrell Henderson did go again. He will not last this long after the news of Cam Akers, so expect to draft him more in rounds 4 through 6. Jamal Williams, Devontae Parker, Henry Ruggs, Nelson Aguilar, and Justin Fields to round out the draft. We are seeing some defenses go here. Baltimore Ravens kicked it off, followed by Young Hoo Koo, Washington football team, Justin Tucker, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Pittsburgh Steelers, Harrison Butker, and the New England Patriots. This was a mistake on our end setting up the draft. Since we were only doing 13 teams, we probably should have turned off kickers and defenses just because we traditionally say draft them in the last couple rounds. So we're probably going to get some players in these next 2 picks that aren't, going to be available because they're going to go because people are going to wait on their kickers and defenses. But I think we should still, as best as we could, play it out without drafting those 2, unless you think we should, hey, we said 13 teams, let's go kickers and defenses. The guy that you mentioned that I loved last time was Elijah Moore. I love his potential. I think he has a lot of upside. I talked about Corey Davis 3-4 rounds ago. Elijah Moore could overtake him. Some people are still high on the Denzel Mims train, but I do look for that team to, put the ball up in the air, be down a lot, make some passing. I think he could be a solid pick. Could be a fun potential guy. You mentioned Bateman. And then McCole Hardman, as of right now, he's not really being talked about as a guy that should be drafted very high. And obviously, because he seems to be a guy that's either going to take one play for 70 yards and a touchdown or dud on your bench. But they lost Sammy Watkins. They haven't replaced him with anybody notable yet. Mecole Hardman could be someone sneaky that ends up, getting a lot of points, a lot more than we're used to or expecting. So he could be a fun boom potential here in the mid rounds. And again, we are building out our depth right now. We should have turned off kickers and defenses since we were only doing 13 rounds. So it's too early in my opinion, to take either of those. But George, it's your pick, and I'm talking a lot for it being your pick.
All right, so I think with 2 picks left, the one thing that would make me not want to take a wide receiver is if you want to throw in a backup tight end and you want to throw in a backup quarterback. Backup quarterback maybe more because we took a quarterback late in Tom Brady. If you don't back up Mark Andrews, you can probably find a good fill in as like a flyer or a streamer on free agency for his bye week, or get somebody later than round 13 if we don't extend it. I think for this case, let's go without the kicker in defense. I was totally prepared to skip the kicker anyway. But hear me out. Russell Gage is now the number 2 wide receiver in Atlanta. Russell Gage played very well last year when Julio Jones was out with injury. As a late round flyer here, I think he could be one of those sneaky guys that ends up being a flex starter, maybe even a borderline wide receiver too, that nobody is thinking about in their drafts. So I'm totally prepared to skip the backup tight end. Maybe we'll take a backup quarterback if we decide to, or if we just want to talk late round flyers, we'll go somewhere else in the next round. I like Elijah Moore, but I really am honing in on Russell Gage here for this pick.
Okay. You caught me off guard here. Thank you for not taking the other one that I can't pronounce that you say so elegantly. I don't hate it.
Zaccheaus?
Yes, that guy. I'm glad you didn't pick him because I didn't want to try to say his name on the podcast. Hey, it's a good late round sleeper, and that's where we're at. We're talking round 12 and round 13. I do got to talk quick so I can make your pick. So if you want to go for it, sure. I don't think there's much of an upside. We're talking a rookie or a potential young guy that could break out. With Mark Andrews, though, I am on board of not taking a backup tight end. We'll stream the week he's out there, and if we lose Mark Andrews, well, that backup tight end who we're going to stream is going to be our new starter, and we'll just stream every week. And at this point, I'm cool with streaming quarterbacks as well with guys like Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield on the bench. And I typically only take one of those and just stream the running backs. But I'll leave the last 20 seconds for you to make your final pick. And if it's Russell Gage, it's Russell Gage. If it's someone else, someone else.
All right, I'm just going to go with my gut, and I will take Russell Gage here with this pick. We might even have Elijah Moore fly back to us in that next round, especially because we're not going to go kicker or defense. I like your idea of not taking the quarterback or tight end. I would probably take one of the two in a regular draft, but in this whole exercise, I think it's a good idea just to look at some more late round flyers. Not shocking, kickers and defenses came off the board here as the computer's filling its roster. That's the way it should. Tyler Bass went next, the kicker. Rams defense and 49ers defense round up to round 12. Round 13 starts with Greg Zuerlein and Will Lutz. Then the Indianapolis Colts defense, and we're back on the board with our last round pick, 13, pick 4. Cody, what kind of late round flyer do you want? Do you still want Elijah Moore because he's still on the board, or are you looking somewhere else?
For me, it would be between Elijah Moore and Mecole Hardman, the two guys I talked about. Maybe even a guy like Cole Beasley. I hear you on the potential backups. If this was a traditional 16 rounds, and we have 2 more skill position picks before getting our kicker and defense. Again, that's not currently how the draft is slated. Because there's guys you love like Trey Lance, Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson. Maybe if you're drafting this early and there's still, we haven't even hit training camp yet. Some teams start tomorrow, some teams start next week. Maybe grabbing Deshaun Watson at this point in the draft wouldn't be a terrible idea, because if he does end up coming back and playing and gets exonerated for all the illegal issues he's going through, definitely would be a steal of the draft, almost similar to, getting Lamar Jackson this late, the year he broke out. But for me, Georgia's hinted at, I love taking wide receivers late. We have old reliable in Marvin Jones. We have the surprise guy in Russell Gage. Just because we do have old reliable in Marvin Jones, that's going to eliminate Cole Beasley for me. Even though he was an all-pro, I do like Gabriel Davis's upside in Buffalo this year, not considering him with this pick. But I do like his upside. I am going to take Elijah Moore. So I'll go ahead and do that. And then once we finish up the draft, we can talk about other guys we are thinking about, or late round flyers. Because again, traditional drafts would go at least 15 rounds, if not 16. But I did just select Elijah Moore to round out our team, and then we had more kickers and defenses go because the computer is filling out those with Jason Sanders, Buffalo Bills defense. And then we had Rodrigo Blankenship, Daniel Carlson, the Denver Broncos, Mason Crosby, and the New Orleans Saints. I'll let George run through our team one more time to see how we did. The full draft board is on the screen if you want to head over to YouTube. But George, why don't you run through our team, and then we can talk a few guys that we like as late round flyers or potential guys that you might have switched out, and then I'll ask you your favorite pick of the draft.
All right, so our team going just straight down in the rounds. Round 1, we took Dalvin Cook, and then it was A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson to stack up on those wide receivers. We took Mark Andrews in round 4, and then we made up for those running backs with Kareem Hunt and James Robinson. Round 7 was Chase Claypool. Round 8, Trey Sermon. Tom Brady in round 9, and then Alexander Madison to handcuff Dalvin Cook. Then we rounded that with 3 wide receivers in Marvin Jones, Russell Gage, and Elijah Moore.
That was a pretty solid team. I think maybe it's just because how the board fell. I think the Tom Brady pick was a steal, especially because 5 quarterbacks went off the board before we got to pick again. So we definitely saved ourselves there. Again, I love the Trey Sermon pick. I think he has a lot of boom potential. The way the board fell, I don't hate the Mark Andrews pick, even though that's typically a spot that I typically wait to the end of the draft. But getting a guy who could put up similar numbers to Darren Waller a whole round later, that's good value. And we got our handcuff with Alexander Mattison. There's not too much I can take away from this draft. Obviously, this team will probably need a few tweaks and trades throughout the season to win a championship, but I love the foundation that we started.
I mean, I know like we've been preaching a lot of safe draft strategies with the whole drafting balance and everything else, and waiting until round 5 for RB2 was a little bit less of a safe strategy on our part. But I think the Kareem Hunt pick is underrated. Like, you could view him as a handcuff, but he's more than a handcuff. He's at least a flex starter, probably an RB2, especially in leagues that you had PPR, half PPR. In this case, we were looking at half PPR. So I think that pick might be my favorite. We have enough running backs behind him that I'm confident in that we have bye week fills, or we have the ability to fill in for an injury, especially with the handcuff and Madison. I think Hunt is my favorite pick. And we definitely are looking good at wide receiver, having Brown and Jefferson. And like you said, with getting Andrews and trying to get a leg up on that position, we really didn't see a drop off at running back, and we reaped the benefits at 2 other positions. And that's the kind of thing that maybe it will look at, oh, maybe it looks like your depth isn't as good, but our starting roster is solid. It may be a bit of a boomer bust kind of draft strategy, but you kind of have to go boomer bust in certain cases. You can't draft safe all the time and expect just to win because of that.
No, I agree. I don't even think we're that boomer bust, and our flex is our most boomer bust spot, on the
Mhm.
weeks if we're going to start James Robinson or Chase Claypool or maybe even Trey Sermon if he, becomes more part of the offense. Uh, but your flex is often, a spot you might be boomer bust with because your flex is normally play later in the week. Normally, your 4 o'clock games or players are going into your flex spot. Sometimes you make your flex a more like McCole Hardman last year. If you know you were up against a really strong component, you would play McCole Hardman because you wanted a guy that could, you know, instantly score 13 points in one play. Sometimes you would just be like, I just need 8 points to keep consistent. So the flex is always something you're playing a little bit with fire on. We did take a big risk by taking Mark Andrews, and we lucked out by getting Kareem Hunt. I do think you made a great point there. Overall, I grade this team 10 out of 10, but that's what every fantasy fan does once they draft. They're going to tell you why their team is the best in the league and nobody's stopping them. But really, guys, we want to hear what what you have to say about your drafts. We do these mock drafts to help you guys explain what we're thinking for each pick, but also help you maybe see some different point of views you're not thinking about, especially when it comes to certain position groups and how you value players. So let us know in the comments on YouTube or on the website. You can sign up to get notifications every time that we post something, and then you can comment right on the website. We'd love to conversate with you guys there. And feel free to send us your drafts, your mock drafts. If you want some feedback, you want us to rank your team, our DMs are always open. But as always, thank you for listening to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. This was a fun one. We do miss Tyler Snyder. He will be back with us eventually, we promise. But until then, you'll just have to live with George and myself.
And don't worry, we're going to keep the spirit of Tyler alive by telling you to get involved. Like we said, our DMs are always open. Please also keep spreading the word, grow the community. We not only want to get more of you to listen to the Couch GMs, be able to help more of you, but we want to create a community of people that can have fun conversations. And we also want to help people get started in fantasy just to grow the fantasy football community more. The how-to videos are coming. And we also think that draft videos like this are a very good tool for people who are getting started, so you can think about hearing draft strategies and stuff. We want to grow the community of fantasy football to help not only you get better, but to have even more fun on top of it. So thank you one more time, everybody, for listening into the Couch GMs podcast. For Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kurth, and we'll see you all next week.